We look at reports saying that there have been incidents of growing gender-based violence against women, especially elderly women in the Eastern Cape. In Qendani, there are reports that elderly women are being accused of being witches, and there have been reports of some of them being shot as a result of this. We speak to Zolani Mkiva, who is Council of Traditional Leaders of South Africa's General Secretary. He joins us now online. A very good evening to you, Zolani. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So let's talk about the latest incidents. What has CONTRALESA heard, and where have these incidents taken place?
Thank you very much, Tabisa, and good evening to the viewers. It's quite really very sad to be hearing that incident of this nature are still happening in our country. And as it were, this has taken place in Qendani, and it is in 3 villages, the village of Ngizela, the village of Nombanjana, and then the 3rd village is called Nonjinga. And these 3 villages are close to each other. There is no natural border, as it were. It's only a natural, traditional borders that are there. Yes, 2 of the women we are told that were shot, and the allegation is that they were suspected of being witches. Or practicing witchcraft. But I was speaking to traditional leaders from the area. One incident is quite an old incident, except for the 2 which have recently happened. And people are quite worried, and elder women are quite very scared and terrified, because no one knows and what criteria is used to identify a suspect and so on and so forth.
Right.
But what we have done...
Zolani, we are showing visuals from our reporter earlier on of another elderly woman who was attacked, allegedly raped and killed. The reason behind that, the motive is not quite certain at the moment, but I want to talk about these incidents where elderly women are hunted down and accused of being witches. As CONTRALESA, this is not the first type of incident in the Eastern Cape. In fact, it's said countrywide, the Eastern Cape has the most such incidents. What is behind these misconceptions?
Well, it's very difficult, because where there is suspicion and superstition related to labeling people as wizards and witches, it's something that sometimes comes out of the blue, because there wouldn't be anything that has happened except that people would look at a particular person who is aging, and he looks in a particular way that defines an old age, and then people simply decide to accuse that person of doing this. And we really, as CONTRALESA, we condemn this in the strongest terms possible, because it is even outside the framework of our culture and the values of Ubuntu that people simply label others as wizards and witches, and therefore they take a decision to take their lives during the night. So what we have done is to engage the traditional leaders and the traditional structures of those communities to begin a process of ensuring that they educate the public insofar as this, and make a very clear command to the communities to desist from doing these things, because it is unlawful, it is unacceptable, and it is dehumanizing our communities, as it were. So I'm saying that
and I mean, Zolani,
we cannot give a full account.
There have been incidents in the past, and you mentioned the areas where this has taken place. And I know in July of 2023, women in Mbisi village were shot dead. In March of 2020, there was an incident in Majuba village where an 83-year-old woman was also burnt to death, brutally attacked, and so forth. And the children and the grandchildren of these women are also attacked. So there's stigma attached to it. Is it because of criminals who target the vulnerable, or is there a very deep societal reason that leads to these superstitions and strengthens them?
Well, these are isolated incidences, and this mentality of labeling people wizards and witches is not something that is deeply entrenched in the broader society. But you do have people who use this for one reason or the other, and one of the reasons would be if people hate one another, and then they would begin to label another person, in that particular way, and therefore begin to mobilize a small number of people to act, in a manner that is vicious against that person and killing that person. So I'm saying that society at large is not confronted by this in a grand scale, but you do have pockets of areas where this thing is being, communicated and driven. I see it as a wedge of where people drive it against their own enemies and begin to label them as such, and therefore killing, particularly women, because it is also associated with women, and unfortunately so. And the best we can do is to condemn and to work together with the law enforcement agencies to ensure that we apprehend all.
So how do you do that? This false sense of mob justice, how do you arrest that and ensure that there is justice for the victims of these heinous crimes, including their families? Because there needs to be more than education programs. What is CONTRALESA going to do through its authority, especially in the rural areas, because this is where it seems to happen, remote and rural areas?
SABC, the best we can do is to embark on that public education, because these practices are things that are happening in the dark, in the night, behind the backs of the community and above the heads of the members of the community. And it is done by people who organize themselves in the form of a gang. And they go on a witch hunt to hunt down old women and brutalize them and terrorize them, killing them. So we use the platforms that we have as communities to try and educate our communities about this. But however, we go beyond that and ensure that today I was speaking to a number of headmen. Headman Soga gave me the context of what is happening in his own area of Mizela. And I was speaking to Nkosi Pikisa as well, where these things are happening in Grendane. I also spoke to Nkosi Patutolo Charlie, and I was saying that they have to be very aggressive in ensuring that they work together as a traditional authority with police, because as you know, the stations are situated in the city center, and but at the same time, you don't want to create another alternative structure right in the middle of the community, because structures like that are easily hijacked. If you were to have a specific structure that was to operate and bring security and order at night, they also get hijacked and used, in a different direction. So I'm saying that the traditional authorities are encouraged to work closely with police to ensure that there is a level of patrolling and visibility on the part of police, even in those specific rural areas where this thing is happening.
A very worrying phenomenon.
We don't have street lights. We don't have street lights in rural areas. So only lights are only in the actual homesteads and the houses. So which is a problem and a challenge. So the best we can do is to work together with our community members and ensure that if they have a sense or they have instincts that there are people who are coming in the form of gangs, they must begin to use any way of communicating with their neighbors and bring the community together.
And of course, this is a countrywide phenomenon, a very heartbreaking one. Zolani Mkiva, thank you so much for speaking to us. He's the General Secretary of the Council of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, and hoping that those who are in that community of Qendani and elsewhere around the country where these heinous crimes, as I said, are taking place, that there is a community effort to put an end to it. The judicial conduct